What happens when a former royal walks onto a respected news anchor's set expecting red carpet treatment but gets hit with hard questions instead? In just 36 seconds, what started as a routine interview turned into television history as one guest's shocking meltdown exposed the entitled behavior millions suspected all along. Make sure to subscribe right now because we are pulling back the curtain on royalty's dark side, exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We have got the raw footage they do not want you to see, and you will not want to miss a single reveal. Drop your thoughts in the comments about this outrageous behavior. The studio lights were bright that evening when Meghan walked onto the set of Anderson Cooper's show. She smiled at the cameras, clearly expecting another soft interview where she could control the narrative like she had done so many times before. But Anderson Cooper is not that kind of journalist. He is known for asking the tough questions, for digging deeper when others stay on the surface. And tonight, he was not going to let anyone slide by with rehearsed answers and victim stories. The interview started normally enough. Anderson welcomed her to the show, his trademark silver hair perfectly styled, his expression professional and neutral. Meghan settled into the guest chair, crossing her legs and adjusting her designer dress. She looked confident, almost too confident, like she already knew how this conversation would go. Anderson began with a simple question. "Thank you for being here tonight. I want to start by asking about your recent claims regarding your treatment by the royal family. Can you provide specific examples with dates and witnesses?" Meghan's smile flickered for just a moment. She clearly had not expected him to ask for specifics right out of the gate. "Well, Anderson, as I have said before, there were many instances of concern about how dark our son's skin might, right? But who specifically said this? When did they say it? Were there other people present?" Anderson leaned forward slightly, his pen poised above his notepad. This was not a gotcha moment. This was basic journalism. If you make claims, you need to back them up with facts. Meghan shifted in her seat. "I do not think it is fair to throw anyone under the bus like that. I am not asking you to throw anyone under the bus. I am asking you to provide context for serious allegations you have made publicly. These are claims of racism within one of the world's most famous families. The public deserves to know the truth." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Meghan's expression hardened. "Anderson, I came here tonight thinking this would be a safe space where I could share my story without being interrogated like I am on trial." Anderson did not flinch. "This is not an interrogation. This is an interview. There is a difference. When public figures make serious accusations, journalists have a responsibility to ask follow-up questions. That is how the truth comes out. You are just like the rest of them," Meghan snapped, her voice rising. "You say you want to hear my truth, but what you really want is to tear me down. You want to protect the institution that tried to silence me." Anderson remained calm. His decades of experience in difficult interviews showed, "I do not want to tear you down. I want clarity. You have told various versions of this story in different interviews. In one interview, you said you would not reveal who made the comment because it would be too damaging. In another interview, different details emerged. I am simply trying to understand what actually happened." Meghan stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I do not have to sit here and be attacked by someone who clearly has an agenda." "Please sit down," Anderson said firmly but politely. "No one is attacking you. These are legitimate questions that any journalist would ask." "Legitimate questions," Meghan laughed bitterly. "You are trying to make me look like a liar on national television. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I have been through?" Anderson put down his pen and looked directly at her. "I know exactly who you are. You are someone who chose to do this interview. You chose to come on my show. And when you come on my show, you answer questions. That is how interviews work." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The camera crew remained silent, capturing every second of this unfolding disaster. Meghan's face was flushed, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. "How dare you speak to me like that?" Meghan said, her voice shaking with anger. "I am not one of your regular guests that you can push around. I have dealt with the British press, with palace officials, with people far more powerful than you, and I will not sit here and be disrespected." Anderson's expression remained neutral, but there was steel in his voice when he responded. "Asking follow-up questions is not disrespect. It is journalism. If you cannot handle basic questions about claims you yourself have made publicly, then perhaps you should not be making those claims." That was it. That was the moment everything exploded. Meghan ripped off her microphone, the wire yanking against the battery pack clipped to her dress. "You know what, Anderson? You are nothing but a puppet for the establishment. You sit here in your fancy studio, pretending to be some champion of truth, but you are just another tool used to silence women who dare to speak up. Anderson remained seated, his hands folded calmly on his desk. I have interviewed presidents, world leaders, dictators, and survivors of unimaginable tragedies. I treat everyone with the same standard of journalistic integrity. That includes you. Journalistic integrity? Meghan laughed again, but this time it sounded almost manic. You do not know the meaning of those words. You are a disgrace to journalism. You are a disgrace to this network, and you are certainly a disgrace to anyone who believed you actually cared about the truth. The studio fell completely silent. Everyone watching knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, something that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. This was not just a celebrity losing their temper. This was a complete meltdown on live television. Anderson finally stood up, his tall frame giving him a commanding presence. When he spoke, his voice was measured and professional, but there was no mistaking the firmness behind his words. I've been doing this job for over 30 years. I have faced criticism, threats, and attempts to intimidate me into backing down from tough questions. But I have never, and I will never, compromise my integrity for anyone, regardless of their title or their story. If you cannot handle being asked to support your claims with evidence, then you have no business making those claims in the first place. He gestured toward the door. I think it is best if you leave now. Meghan stared at him in disbelief. You are kicking me off your show? You are not being kicked off. You remove your microphone. You insulted me and my integrity. You have made it clear you are not interested in having an actual conversation. So yes, I think it is time for you to go. For a moment, Meghan looked like she might say something else. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the cameras, at the crew members who were carefully avoiding eye contact, at Anderson, who stood firm and unwavering. This is not over, she finally said, her voice low and threatening. You have no idea who you are dealing with. Anderson did not respond. He simply watched as she grabbed her purse and stormed toward the studio exit. Her heels clicked loudly against the floor, each step echoing in the stunned silence. A production assistant opened the door for her, and she swept through it without a backward glance. Anderson turned back to the camera. The professional mask slipped back into place as if nothing had happened. We are going to take a quick break, he said smoothly. When we come back, we will discuss the importance of accountability in public discourse. The moment the camera light went off, the studio erupted. Crew members started talking all at once, their voices overlapping in excitement and shock. But Anderson just sat back down at his desk, picked up his pen, and started making notes for the next segment. Business as usual. Because here is what people need to understand. Anderson Cooper did not go into that interview trying to ambush anyone. He went in trying to do his job. He asked the questions that any serious journalist would ask. He pushed for specifics when vague allegations were thrown around. He refused to accept rehearsed talking points as answers. And Meghan? She walked into that studio expecting special treatment. She expected softball questions. She expected sympathy and validation. She expected Anderson to nod along and let her paint herself as a victim without ever having to provide proof or context for her claims. But that is not how real journalism works. You do not get to make serious accusations against an entire institution and then cry foul when someone asks you to back it up. You do not get to demand to be believed without evidence. You do not get to attack a journalist for doing their job just because you do not like the questions being asked. The really telling moment was not when she got angry. People get angry. Emotions run high in interviews. The telling moment was when she attacked Anderson's character, when she called him a disgrace, when she tried to paint him as part of some establishment conspiracy against her. That is the playbook of someone who knows they cannot answer the questions being asked. When you cannot attack the argument, you attack the person making it. When you cannot provide evidence, you claim the person asking for evidence is biased. When you cannot defend your position, you storm off and declare yourself the victim of yet another attack. Anderson handled it perfectly. He remained calm. He remained professional. He did not raise his voice or lose his temper. He simply stated facts and stood his ground. That is what real integrity looks like. That is what real journalism looks like. Meanwhile, Meghan showed exactly what so many people had suspected all along. Behind the carefully crafted image of a wronged woman speaking her truth was someone who expected to be able to say whatever she wanted without ever being challenged. Someone who believed her status and her story made her immune to basic journalistic scrutiny. The phrase she used, "Do you know who I am?" tells you everything you need to know. That is the language of entitlement. That is someone who believes their identity and their perceived victim status should grant them special privileges. That is someone who thinks the normal rules do not apply to them. But here's the thing about Anderson Cooper. He has interviewed everyone: world leaders, celebrities, royalty, survivors of disasters, people with unimaginable power, and people with none. And he treats them all the same. He asks hard questions. He follows up when answers do not make sense. He does not give anyone a free pass just because of who they are or what they have been through. That is what separates real journalists from people who just conduct friendly chats disguised as interviews. Anderson understands that his job is not to make his guests comfortable. His job is to get to the truth. His job is to ask the questions that the public wants and needs answered. And when someone cannot handle that level of scrutiny, when someone melts down and storms off rather than answer basic questions, that tells us something important. It tells us that maybe, just maybe, their story does not hold up under even gentle examination. Think about what happened in that studio. Anderson asked for specific examples, dates, witnesses. These are not unreasonable requests. These are basic questions that anyone making serious allegations should be prepared to answer. And instead of answering them, instead of providing the evidence she claimed to have, Meghan attacked the questioner. She accused him of having an agenda. She accused him of being part of the establishment. She accused him of trying to silence women. But at no point did she actually answer the questions. At no point did she provide the specifics he asked for. At no point did she back up her claims with anything concrete. That is not how innocent people respond to questions. That is not how people telling the truth respond when asked for details. That is how people respond when they know their story has holes in it and they are hoping no one will notice. The way she tried to turn it around on Anderson, making him the bad guy for doing his job, was particularly revealing. She wanted to make it about him, about his supposed bias, about his alleged agenda. Because as long as the focus was on Anderson, it did not have to be on her inability to answer straightforward questions. But Anderson did not take the bait. He kept the focus where it belonged, on the claims being made and the evidence to support them. He refused to let her derail the conversation into an argument about his character. He maintained his professional composure even as she fell apart. And that composure, that refusal to engage in the drama she was trying to create, that is what makes Anderson Cooper one of the best in the business. He knows that his job is not to win arguments or score points. His job is to ask questions and let the answers, or lack of answers, speak for themselves. When he told her it was time to leave, it was not done with anger or satisfaction. It was done with the same calm professionalism he had maintained throughout the entire encounter. She had removed her and microphone. She had insulted him repeatedly. She had made it clear she was not there for a real interview, so he ended it. Simple as that. The contrast between them could not have been more stark. Anderson, standing tall, professional, unwavering in his principles. Meghan, flustered, angry, unable to handle basic questions about her own claims. One looked like a seasoned professional who knows exactly who he is and what his job requires. The other looked like someone whose carefully constructed narrative had just collapsed under the gentlest scrutiny. Her final threat, "You have no idea who you are dealing with," would have been laughable if it was not so revealing. What was that supposed to mean? Was she threatening him? Was she suggesting she had power over him? Was she implying that she could damage his career or reputation? Because if that is what she meant, she badly miscalculated. Anderson Cooper has been in journalism for decades. He has faced down actual powerful people. He has reported from war zones. He has interviewed dictators and criminals. The idea that he would be intimidated by a former actress who married into royalty and then left is almost amusing. But more than that, the threat showed a fundamental misunderstanding of what Anderson does and why he does it. He is not afraid of powerful people. He is not worried about making the wrong person angry. His reputation is built on asking hard questions, regardless of who is sitting across from him. That is why people trust him. That is why his show has lasted so long. That is why he is respected even by people who disagree with him. Because everyone knows that Anderson Cooper will ask the tough questions, will push for real answers, and will not be swayed by titles or tears or tantrums. The moment Meghan stormed out of that studio, she proved everything Anderson had been trying to get at with his questions. She proved that she could not handle scrutiny. She proved that her story did not hold up to basic examination. She proved that when pushed for specifics, she had nothing to offer but anger and accusations. And Anderson? He proved that real journalism still exists. He proved that not everyone is willing to treat celebrities like fragile flowers who cannot be questioned. He proved that integrity means treating everyone to the same standard, regardless of their story or their status. When he turned back to the camera and calmly announced they would discuss accountability in public discourse after the break, that was not just smooth television production. That was a statement. That was him saying that what just happened mattered, that it meant something, that there were lessons to be learned from watching someone fall apart when asked to back up their words. The crew's reaction said it all. They knew they had just witnessed something special. They knew they had just seen a masterclass in how to handle an out-of-control interview subject. They knew they had just watched someone try to bully and intimidate a seasoned journalist and fail completely. And when Anderson just sat back down and started making notes for the next segment, that showed his real character. No gloating, no celebrating, no dwelling on the drama that had just unfolded. Just back to work. Just focused on the next story, the next guest, the next opportunity to ask the questions that need to be asked. That is what real professionalism looks like, not the carefully managed image that some celebrities project, not the rehearsed responses and controlled narratives. Real professionalism is staying calm when someone is screaming at you. Real professionalism is maintaining your standards even when someone is trying to make you the villain. Real professionalism is knowing that your job matters more than any one interview or any one guest. This interview will be remembered for a long time. It will be studied in journalism schools as an example of how to maintain integrity under pressure. It will be referenced every time someone talks about accountability in media. It will be cited as proof that not everyone in television is willing to give celebrities a free pass. But more than that, it exposed something that many people had suspected but could not prove. It exposed the entitled attitude that lurks behind some celebrity victim narratives. It exposed the anger that emerges when someone who expects special treatment does not get it. It exposed the tactics used to avoid accountability, the attempts to change the subject, the attacks on anyone who dares to ask questions. Meghan walked into that studio thinking she was in control. She thought she could steer the conversation wherever she wanted. She thought her status and her story would shield her from tough questions. She was wrong on all counts. Anderson showed her, and everyone watching, that real journalism does not work that way. Real journalism asks hard questions. Real journalism demands evidence. Real journalism does not care about your title or your tears or your attempts to play the victim. In 36 seconds, everything changed. In the time it took for Anderson to ask a follow-up question and for Meghan to realize she could not answer it, the entire dynamic shifted. What was supposed to be her moment to shine turned into her moment of exposure. What was supposed to be another platform for her narrative turned into a demonstration of how hollow that narrative really is. And that is why this moment matters. Not because it was dramatic television, though it certainly was. Not because it was entertaining to watch someone have a meltdown, though some people will see it that way. It matters because it showed that accountability still exists. It matters because it proved that not everyone will nod along when vague accusations are made without evidence. Anderson Cooper stood up for journalistic integrity that day. He refused to compromise his standards. He refused to give special treatment to someone who expected it. He refused to let serious allegations go unchallenged just because asking for specifics might make his guest uncomfortable. That is the kind of journalism we need. That is the kind of interviewing that serves the public interest. That is the kind of professional behavior that reminds us why the free press matters and why holding people accountable for their words is so important. Meghan wanted everyone to believe she was the victim. Anderson wanted to know if her claims were true. She wanted sympathy. He wanted evidence. She wanted validation. He wanted answers. And when those two approaches collided, only one person remained standing with their integrity intact. The ex had said everything that needed to be said. The dramatic removal of the microphone, the insults hurled at a man who was simply doing his job, the refusal to engage with legitimate questions, the storm out instead of the conversation. All of it painted a picture of someone who could not handle being treated like everyone else. And Anderson's calm response, his professional handling of an impossible situation, his refusal to stoop to her level or engage in the drama she was trying to create, that painted a picture of someone who knows exactly who he is and what his job requires. This was not just a failed interview. This was a moment that revealed character. It revealed what happens when entitlement meets accountability. It revealed what happens when someone who expects special treatment encounters someone who treats everyone the same. It revealed the difference between real journalism and celebrity puff pieces. The questions Anderson asked were not unfair. They were not designed to trap or humiliate. They were basic questions that anyone making serious accusations should be able to answer. Who said what? When did they say it? What was the context? Were there witnesses? These are not gotcha questions. These are the foundations of determining truth. And the fact that Meghan could not or would not answer them speaks volumes. The fact that she responded with attacks and anger instead of facts and evidence tells us everything we need to know about the strength of her position. If your story is true, if your allegations are accurate, if your claims can be verified, then you should welcome questions. You should want people to dig deeper. You should be eager to provide the specifics that would prove your case beyond doubt. But if your story has problems, if your allegations are vague, if your claims cannot be verified, then questions become your enemy. Then journalists who ask for evidence become the bad guys. Then the entire exercise becomes about attacking the questioner instead of defending the claims. That is what happened in that studio. Anderson asked for what any journalist would ask for. Meghan could not provide it, so she tried to make it about him instead of about her inability to back up her words. And when that did not work, when Anderson refused to let her derail the conversation, she had no choice but to leave. Because staying meant continuing to face questions she could not answer. Staying meant watching her narrative crumble in real time. Staying meant exposing herself as someone whose story does not hold up to even gentle scrutiny. So she left. She stormed out. She threw her tantrum and made her threats and tried to salvage some dignity from a situation that had gone completely off the rails. But all she really did was prove Anderson's point. All she really did was show everyone watching that when you push even a little bit, when you ask for specifics instead of accepting vague claims, the whole thing falls apart. That studio became a courtroom of public opinion that day. Anderson was the prosecutor, calmly laying out his case through careful questions. Meghan was the defendant who could not provide a coherent defense. And the verdict was clear to anyone paying attention. Anderson Cooper did not kick Meghan off his show to be cruel. He did not do it for ratings or attention. He did it because she made it impossible to continue. She removed her microphone. She insulted him. She refused to participate in an actual interview. At that point, what choice did he have? He could have let her continue ranting. He could have tried to calm her down and steer things back on track. But why? She had made her position clear. She was not there for an honest conversation. She was there for validation and sympathy. And when she did not get it, she revealed her true character. So Anderson did what any self-respecting journalist would do. He ended the interview. He maintained his dignity and his standards. He showed that his integrity was not for sale and his principles were not negotiable. And in doing so, he gave us all a gift. He gave us a clear example of what real journalism looks like. He gave us a demonstration of how to handle someone who tries to bully their way out of accountability. He gave us proof that not everyone in media is willing to play along with celebrity victim narratives. The moment is over now. The interview ended. Meghan left the building. Anderson went on to his next segment. But the impact of those 36 seconds will last much longer. They will be replayed and analyzed. They will be discussed and debated. They will serve as a reminder of what happens when entitlement meets integrity. And maybe, just maybe, they will inspire other journalists to follow Anderson's example, to ask the hard questions, to demand evidence for serious claims, to treat everyone to the same standard regardless of their story or status, to remember that their job is not to make guests comfortable but to get to the truth, because that is what the public deserves. That is what honest discourse requires. That is what separates real journalism from propaganda and public relations. And that is what Anderson Cooper delivered that day, even as his guest fell apart in front of millions of viewers. The entitled guest who could not handle basic questions, the professional host who refused to compromise his standards, the explosive confrontation that exposed everything. That is the story of what happened when Meghan walked onto Anderson Cooper's set expecting one thing and got something completely different. And in the end, only one person walked away with their reputation intact. Only one person demonstrated real character under pressure. Only one person showed what it means to have actual integrity instead of just talking about it. That person was Anderson Cooper. And that is why this moment matters.